Day 53. Nancy Guthrie has not been found, and in the last 48 hours, the sheriff overseeing this investigation said something on camera that does not align with what his own department released to the public 6 weeks ago. On February 10th, FBI Director Kash Patel posted 4 black and white images to social media. An armed, masked individual, gloves, a 25-liter backpack, standing outside the front of Nancy Guthrie's home in Tucson, Arizona. The Bureau presented these as evidence from the night she disappeared. But one of those 4 images shows a man at that same property with no backpack and no visible weapon, a noticeably different configuration from the other 3. That detail did not go unnoticed. People began asking whether that image came from a different night, specifically January 11th, 20 days before the disappearance. The sheriff responded. He said there were no timestamps on those images, that any claim they were taken on different nights was, in his direct words, purely speculative. Then investigators asked Google, the company behind Nancy's Nest cameras, to analyze the metadata and confirm the date. Google's answer: they could not determine that the image was from January 11th or from any specific date. Neither the FBI nor Google has commented beyond that. And yet, in an interview that aired this week, Sheriff Chris Nanos told NBC News that investigators do believe something occurred on January 11th based on the FBI's own digital analysis of Nancy's camera equipment. So, the sheriff says the images have no verifiable dates. He also says something happened on January 11th, and the images that might show what happened on January 11th are the same ones with no verifiable dates. These statements are not in direct conflict, but they are not fully coherent either. And that gap between what has been officially released and what the evidence can actually support is exactly what this video is going to stay with. The central question here is not who took Nancy Guthrie. No one has publicly named a suspect. No arrest has been made. The question this video is asking is more specific. How much of the official account does not match what the people who live closest to that house actually witnessed, and why has none of that witness testimony appeared in a single press conference? If you have been tracking this case since February, stay close. There are accounts from neighbors in this video that have not been addressed by law enforcement publicly. If you are watching for the first time, the next 2 minutes will give you everything you need. And if Unsolved America is new to you, subscribe and turn on notifications. We cover every development in this case. Every single one. Day 53. The neighborhood is still. The investigation is active. And the gap between what we have been told and what the witnesses say they saw has not been closed. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She lives alone in the Catalina foothills, a quiet residential area just north of Tucson, Arizona. She has limited mobility and depends on daily heart medication. Her daughter, Savannah Guthrie, co-hosts the Today Show on NBC. That connection is why this case has received the level of national attention and federal resources it has. But the story here is not about Savannah. It is about what happened at a house in Tucson sometime in the early hours of February 1st. The night before, January 31st, Nancy had dinner with her daughter Annie. Annie dropped her off at home around 9:30 p.m. That was the last time any family members saw her. The next morning, a friend noticed Nancy had not shown up to watch a live-streamed church service, something she did most Sundays. The friend reached out to the family. The family searched the property for roughly an hour. At noon on February 1st, they called police. What investigators found inside that house ended any question about whether Nancy had left voluntarily. Her phone was still there. Her wallet was there. Her daily medication was there. Blood on the front porch was confirmed by DNA testing to be hers. The front door doorbell camera had been removed. Sheriff Chris Nanos stated publicly that he believed Nancy had been taken against her. Well, given her mobility limitations, she could not walk 50 yards without assistance. According to Nanos, a voluntary departure was not treated as a credible scenario by law enforcement. The FBI joined the investigation within days. Search teams deployed drones, K-9 units, and aerial resources. Federal authorities coordinated with U.S. Customs and Border Protection. On February 17th, all members of the Guthrie family, siblings and spouses included, were formally cleared as suspects. Ransom notes demanding Bitcoin payment were sent to local media. 2 deadlines passed with no confirmed transaction. As of today, no suspect has been publicly named. No location for Nancy has been confirmed. The investigation remains active. That is the case as it has been publicly reported. What follows is what the press conferences did not cover. There is a house a few doors down from Nancy Guthrie's property. The couple who lives there has 4 Ring cameras installed on the exterior. 4 separate cameras covering 4 separate angles. On the night of January 31st into February 1st, 3 of those cameras recorded normally. The 4th one, the camera positioned closest to Nancy's home, shows nothing. Its history for that overnight window is marked not available. The couple told NBC News the timing felt, in their word, uncanny. This was not a camera that had failed before. It was not a system-wide outage affecting all 4 devices. It was one camera, the one facing the direction of Nancy's house. That detail sat largely unreported for several weeks. Then the FBI started going door to door in the neighborhood, not asking about suspicious activity on February 1st. Asking specifically whether residents had noticed any disruptions to their internet service that night. According to NBC News, multiple homeowners reported being asked this same question, and according to those homeowners, investigators told them directly that several people in the area had already mentioned connectivity glitches during that same overnight window. The Pima County Sheriff's Department subsequently confirmed to NBC that it is investigating a damaged utility box located around the corner from Nancy's home. Investigators are examining whether that damage is connected to the reported internet disruption, whether the disruption is connected to the disappearance, whether any of this was deliberate, and then there is what the doorbell footage itself shows, or rather, what the person in that footage appears to be carrying. In the images released by FBI Director Kash Patel on February 10th, investigators describe an armed individual wearing gloves and a backpack. But observers who watched the footage closely noted something in one of the suspect's pockets, an object with an antenna-like shape. News Nation reported on this detail. Law enforcement has not publicly confirmed what that object is, and the FBI has not described it as a signal jamming device. That distinction matters, and it will be treated here as what it currently is, a question, not a conclusion, but the question is a reasonable one. A Wi-Fi jammer, if deployed, could interrupt cloud-based camera storage. It could explain why footage from a single camera failed to upload during a specific window. What it does not easily explain, and this is where the theory runs into a real complication, is why the camera at Nancy's own front door still captured the suspect at all. Morgan Wright, founder of the National Center for Open and Unsolved Cases, told Fox News Digital that true Wi-Fi jamming typically disrupts all devices within range. If a jammer was used, he said, you would expect no footage from any nearby camera, not selective footage from some, and gaps from others. So the internet disruption is confirmed by multiple neighbors and now under active federal investigation. The mechanism behind it is not confirmed, and the one camera that failed was the one that would have provided the clearest view of what happened outside Nancy's home that night. That is the first layer. The one most coverage has moved past without slowing down. The second layer starts 20 days earlier, and it requires going back to a date that neither investigators nor the family mentioned publicly until 50 days into the search, January 11th. 3 weeks before the disappearance, investigators began quietly asking neighbors for camera footage from that specific date, weeks before anyone explained why. Multiple residents told Fox News Digital that FBI agents and sheriff's deputies visited their homes multiple times, with one neighbor confirming agents returned a total of 5 times. On that final visit, she said, the FBI and the sheriff's office together specifically brought up January 11th. Why that date? Sheriff Nanos addressed it this week in an interview with NBC. His answer was carefully worded. He said investigators believe something occurred on January 11th, based on the FBI's analysis of the camera equipment and digital data recovered from Nancy's home. He stressed that what exactly occurred remains speculative. He said there is no way to confirm, from the images alone, that the suspect was physically present at the house on that date. He said the only reason investigators know the doorbell footage is from the night of the Cope abduction is that the suspect is seen removing the camera itself. Read that sequence again slowly. The images have no timestamps. The only image they can confirm is from the night of the abduction, is the one showing the camera being removed. Every other image, including the one showing a man at that property without a backpack and without a weapon, has no verified date attached to it. Google was brought in to analyze the metadata from the Nest camera system. According to NBC News, Google told authorities it could not definitively determine that any specific image was taken on January 11th or on any particular date. The FBI has not commented. Google has not commented. And the sheriff, in the same interview where he confirmed investigators believe something happened on January 11th, also confirmed that no image can be positively tied to that date. This is where the official account develops a fault line. 4 images were released as evidence from the night Nancy disappeared. One of those images shows a different configuration, no backpack, no visible weapon. If that image is from a different night, then the public was shown a composite of 2 separate visits presented as a single event. That has not been confirmed. It has not been denied. It remains, in the sheriff's own framing, unresolvable with current evidence. If you are watching this and you live in the Catalina foothills area, if you have footage, notes, or a memory from January 11th, or the surrounding days that you have not yet shared, the FBI tip line is 1800C-ALL-FBI. That number is in the description below. The family is offering a $1 million reward for information leading to Nancy's recovery. No detail is too small. The investigators have said exactly that. And the neighbor who did come forward, the one who saw something on January 11th, only connected the pieces after being asked to look back. You may be sitting on something you do not yet know is significant. The question at the center of this video is not whether the images were from different nights. The question is if someone was at that house before February 1st. If January 11th was not a coincidence, then who knew Nancy Guthrie was there, and how long had they been watching? Aldine Meister has lived in the Catalina foothills for nearly 30 years. She is not a social media commentator. She is not a true crime enthusiast posting theories. She is a neighbor who saw something on a specific morning, recognized it as wrong in the moment, and then, like most people, would filed it away and moved on. She only understood what she had seen after investigators came to her door and asked her to look back. According to News Nation and Fox News Digital, Meister told investigators she was inside her home one morning, around January 11th, when she noticed a man outside. He was walking in the direction of Nancy Guthrie's street. She did not know him. She had never seen him before that morning, and has not seen him since. What stopped her from dismissing him immediately was not one thing. It was a combination of small details that added up to something that did not fit. He was wearing street clothes, not workout gear, not the kind of shoes you put on to walk a neighborhood for exercise. His hat was pulled low, far lower than casual wear. He was moving slowly, not the slow pace of someone cooling down after a run, the slow pace of someone who is looking. And when he reached the intersection that leads directly toward Nancy's street, according to Meister, he stopped. He took a long look down that road. Then he kept moving. Meister reported this to the FBI. That is confirmed. What has not appeared in any official press conference, not one, across 53 days of public statements, is any acknowledgement that a witness placed a man matching a general description of the suspect in that neighborhood, walking toward that house, on the specific date investigators have identified as significant. A few houses away, another neighbor came forward with a different kind of account. Jeff Lamy told Crime Stories with Nancy Grace that his dogs woke him in the middle of the night on 2 separate occasions. Once around January 11th, once in the early morning hours of February 1st, the night Nancy disappeared. Both times, the dogs wanted to go outside. Both times, the behavior was unusual enough that it registered. His dogs had not done this before, and they have not done it since. Lamy said he only connected those 2 nights after investigators asked residents to review their footage and check their records. He had camera images of himself taking the dogs out. He shared them. Whether they have forensic value, investigators have not said. But the timing correlation across both dates now flagged by the FBI is something he said he cannot explain away. These are single-source accounts, reported by specific outlets and not yet corroborated by a second independent source. They are being presented here as what they are. Testimony from named neighbors who spoke to media, who also say they spoke to federal investigators, and whose accounts have not been contradicted publicly by law enforcement. That is not confirmation. It is also not nothing. What makes these accounts worth sitting with is the description Meister provided. A man, younger, average build, moving slowly and deliberately near an intersection leading to Nancy's street. The FBI's official description of the suspect, seen on the doorbell camera, released February 12th, reads, male, approximately 5 feet 9 to 5 feet 10, average build. There is no confirmed connection between Meister's account and the man in the footage. None. But the physical profile does not conflict, and the date does not conflict, and the location a few minutes walk from Nancy's front door does not conflict. Investigators visited some neighbors in the Catalina foothills 5 separate times. Not once, not twice. 5. The final visit, one resident told Fox News Digital, was when the FBI and the sheriff's office together brought up January 11th by name. That is not the behavior of an investigation, treating that date as background noise. That is the behavior of an investigation that believes something happened on that date and is still trying to find the footage to prove it. The footage may not exist. Neighbors told News Nation that several of their camera systems showed gaps or connectivity failures for overnight windows in that period. Whether that is related to the damaged utility box around the corner, to the reported internet disruptions, or to something else entirely has not been determined. What investigators have confirmed is that they are looking. They are still looking. There is one more detail from this phase of the investigation that has not received the attention it deserves. News Nation reported that the FBI returned to the neighborhood specifically to ask about former residents, people who had lived in the area and moved out shortly before Nancy disappeared. Law enforcement has not named anyone. No arrests were made from that inquiry. No update has followed it. The thread was pulled and then, publicly at least, went quiet. Former neighbors, a damaged utility box, camera footage marked not available, a witness who saw a man she did not recognize, walking slowly toward Nancy's street on a date the FBI now says was significant. None of these details individually constitutes evidence of a coordinated crime. But the pattern they describe, if the accounts are accurate, is not the pattern of a spontaneous act. It is the pattern of preparation. And preparation takes time. It takes visits. It takes knowing which cameras to avoid, which angles to use, which streets to approach from. It takes knowing that an 84-year-old woman lives alone in that house and depends on medication. She cannot function without. Someone knew those things about Nancy Guthrie before February 1st. The investigation has not yet publicly explained how. This is where the official account and the witness accounts diverge most clearly. Law enforcement has described a targeted crime. Sheriff Nanos confirmed to NBC Nightly News that investigators believe they know why Nancy's home was targeted. He did not say what that reason is. He said they are not 100% certain, so it would be irresponsible to tell the public they are safe. That is a specific kind of statement. It implies motive. It implies familiarity. It does not explain the source of either. The ransom notes sent to local media in early February introduced one possible framework: cryptocurrency. Deadlines. The suggestion that Nancy was being held and could be returned for payment. 2 deadlines passed. No confirmed transaction occurred. The family released a video on February 7th, Savannah, Annie, and Cameron together, saying they had received a message and understood it. Savannah said, directly to whoever was holding their mother, "This is very valuable to us, and we will pay." That video was addressed to someone the family believed was real. Whether that person and the person in the doorbell footage are the same individual has never been confirmed. Former FBI Supervisory Special Agent Lance Lysing told CBS News that after 45 days without meaningful new leads, investigations become significantly harder to sustain with momentum. More than 1,500 tips came in after the family announced the $1 million reward. CNN reported that more than 750 of those tips were deemed credible. Credible tips do not mean solved leads. They mean the FBI has 750 separate threads to follow without yet knowing which one connects to Nancy. If you have not yet submitted a tip, and you believe you may have seen something, anything, in the Catalina foothills, in the surrounding area, on January 11th, on the night of January 31st, or in the days between the numbers 1800CALLFBI. The link is in the description. The family statement from March 21st asked the community directly, please search your camera footage, your journal notes, your text messages, your memories. No detail is too small. That request is still open. Day 53, it is still open. What investigators have in front of them right now is a case with confirmed physical evidence, a confirmed crime scene, confirmed ransom communications of unconfirmed authenticity, and a suspect seen on camera whose identity remains unknown. What they also have, and what has not been part of a single press conference are neighbors who say they saw and heard things on dates the FBI itself has flagged as significant. The gap between those two bodies of information has not been bridged publicly. The question of why it has not is not rhetorical. It is the question that takes us into the next layer of this case, and into the part of the evidence record that most coverage has treated as background when it should have been the foreground. Start with what the FBI recovered on March 13th. Investigators had already retrieved the 4 images from the front door camera, the ones released publicly on February 10th. But in the weeks after, ABC News reported that agents went back into Nancy's camera system and recovered additional thumbnail images from 3 other cameras on the property. A camera mounted on the fence near the pool, a camera covering the backyard, a camera showing the driveway and the front of the garage, not video footage. Thumbnails, single frames captured when the cameras detected motion. Those thumbnails showed people in the yard over an unspecified period before the abduction. Family members, landscapers, pool workers, normal activity, nothing that raised flags. Then investigators looked at what those same cameras recorded on the night Nancy disappeared. Nothing. No footage, no thumbnails, no motion detected. The cameras that had been capturing activity in that yard for weeks went silent on the one night. They needed to capture something. Law enforcement sources described this to ABC News as odd. That was the word used. Odd. Set that alongside what the neighbor couple reported about their Ring camera, the one nearest Nancy's home, not available for that same overnight window. Set that alongside the multiple neighbors who told the FBI they noticed internet connectivity issues that night. Set that alongside the damaged utility box around the corner, now under active investigation by the Pima County Sheriff's Department. And then set all of that alongside this. The suspect, seen in the doorbell footage, was carrying an object in his pocket with what observers described as an antenna-like shape. Law enforcement has not confirmed what that object is. It has not been described officially as a jamming device. What has been confirmed is that the FBI is examining whether a Wi-Fi disruption in that neighborhood on February 1st was connected to the abduction. Here is what that pattern describes. If each of those details is taken at face value, someone approached that house knowing where the cameras were, knowing which angles they covered, knowing which one would need to be removed, the doorbell camera, and which ones could be neutralized through other means. The backyard camera, the pool camera, the driveway camera, none of them recorded anything that night. The neighbor's closest camera, not available. The internet in the surrounding area, disrupted. That level of operational awareness does not come from one visit. It does not come from standing on a public sidewalk and looking at the exterior of a house. It comes from time spent in proximity to that property. Repeated proximity, the kind that would let someone learn which cameras were mounted where, which angles they covered, when the yard was active and when it was not. Which brings this back to January 11th. According to the sheriff's own statement this week, the FBI's digital analysis of Nancy's camera equipment led investigators to believe something occurred on that date. According to News Nation and Fox News Digital, Aldine Meister told investigators she saw a man she did not recognize, walking slowly toward Nancy's street around. That time, a man whose physical description does not conflict with the FBI's description of the doorbell suspect. According to Fox News Digital, Jeff Lamey's dogs woke him at an unusual hour on both January 11th and the early morning hours of February 1st. Lamey said the behavior has not happened since. These are single-source accounts. They are reported as such. But they exist, and they have not been addressed by law enforcement in any public statement. Now look at the image with no backpack. One of the 4 images released by the FBI shows a man at Nancy Guthrie's property without the 25-liter backpack, without the visible weapon, a noticeably different configuration than the other 3 images. The sheriff said no timestamp can be verified for any of those images. He said the only image confirmed to be from the night of the abduction is the one where the suspect removes the doorbell camera. Every other image is, by his own account, unverifiable as to date. If the image without the backpack was taken on a different night, and nothing currently rules that out, then what it may show is not a moment from the abduction. It may show reconnaissance. A man at that address, in daylight configuration, without tools, taking a look, 20 days before February 1st. On or around the date the FBI believes something occurred. If that reading is accurate, the public account of this crime changes in a significant way. It would mean the footage released on February 10th was not a single event. It would mean the suspect visited that property at least twice. It would mean the abduction was not the first time he stood at Nancy Guthrie's door. And it would mean that window of preparation, the surveillance, the camera mapping, the timing started no later than January 11th and possibly earlier. Sheriff Nanos told NBC Nightly News that investigators believe they know why Nancy's home was targeted. He did not say what that reason is. But targeted means chosen. Chosen means assessed. Assessed means someone looked at that house and made a decision based on information that Nancy Guthrie was the person they wanted, and that house was the place they could reach her. How someone comes to that conclusion about an 84-year-old woman living alone in a residential neighborhood in Tucson is a question law enforcement has not answered publicly. It may be the most important question in this case, because the answer to how she was targeted likely leads directly to who targeted her. If you are in the Tucson area, if you worked in the Catalina foothills in January landscaping, pool maintenance, delivery, any service that would have brought you into that neighborhood, and you remember anything unusual about that period, the FBI is still receiving information. The number is 1800CALLFBI. The family's reward remains at $1 million. That information is in the description below. Do not wait until you are certain it matters. Let investigators make that determination. Day 53. That is where this case stands tonight. The forensic genetic genealogy process is ongoing. It is the same technique that identified Brian Kohberger in the University of Idaho murders, a case that had gone cold before that analysis cracked it open. But as retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent Lance Lysing told CBS News, the process takes time, significant time. And the DNA recovered from Nancy's home returned what the sheriff described as minimal results from the sample investigators believed was their best target. There is a mixed DNA profile, multiple contributors. Extracting a single, usable profile from a mixture is technically difficult, and the analysis has been sent to a private laboratory in Florida for further processing. More than 1,500 tips came in after the family announced the $1 million reward on February 24th. CNN reported that more than 750 of those were assessed as credible. The FBI has not provided a public update on where those tips stand. The last formal press conference was more than a month ago. The sheriff has given periodic interviews, but the information released in those sessions has been incremental and, in several cases, has created more questions than it resolved. The recall effort against Sheriff Chris Nanos is now active. Community pressure over the handling of the investigation, the contradictions in the January 11 timeline, the absence of public updates. The question of whether the department moved quickly enough in the early hours has translated into formal political action. Nanos has defended his department publicly, stating that investigators are closer than they have ever been. He said the homicide unit is working this case under the active presumption that Nancy is still alive. The family released a statement on March 21st. 50 days in, Savannah and her siblings wrote, "Someone knows something. It is possible a member of this community has information they do not even realize is significant." They asked people to search camera footage, journal notes, text messages, conversations. They pointed specifically to January 31st, the early hours of February 1st, and the late evening of January 11th. Savannah has separately acknowledged in an Instagram video that her family knows their mother may already be gone. She said it plainly. She said if that is what is to be, they will accept it. But she also said they cannot grieve. They can only ache and wonder. They need to know where she is. That is the state of this investigation on day 53. A confirmed crime scene. A confirmed suspect seen on camera whose identity remains unknown. A date 20 days before the disappearance that the FBI believes was significant, that two neighbors say they witnessed unusual activity on, that camera metadata cannot verify or rule out, a pattern of camera failures and internet disruptions on the night she vanished that. Law enforcement is actively examining, a DNA profile being processed in a private lab, thousands of tips being evaluated, and a woman who has not been found. 4 questions remain openly unanswered. The first, who is the man Aldine Meister saw walking toward Nancy's street in January? The second, why did only the camera positioned closest to Nancy's home lose footage on the night she disappeared while 3 others on the same property continued recording? The third, which night was the image without the backpack actually taken? The fourth, What did investigators find when they looked into the former neighbors who moved out of that area shortly before the abduction? And why has there been no public update on that inquiry since? None of these questions have been answered in a press conference. None of them have been addressed in an official statement. The investigation is active. The FBI is present, and Nancy Guthrie is still missing. Most home security systems are designed to record what happens. This case exposes what they cannot do when someone understands their limitations better than the homeowner does. The camera closest to Nancy Guthrie's home failed to record during the window that mattered most. 3 cameras on the same property continued working. That asymmetry is not a random malfunction. It is a specific failure at a specific location during a specific time frame, and it is now under federal investigation. What this case makes visible is a vulnerability that most residential security setups share. Cloud-connected cameras depend on an active internet connection to upload footage. If that connection is interrupted, the recording may still occur locally on the device, but only if the camera has onboard storage. Many do not. Many upload in real time and store nothing locally. If the connection drops, the footage does not exist. The practical implication is direct. If you rely on cloud-based cameras, verify whether your system has local backup storage. If it does not, that is a gap worth addressing. A camera that cannot store footage independently is only as reliable as the network it runs on. And networks, as this case demonstrates, can be disrupted. The second lesson from this case concerns behavioral recognition. Aldine Meister noticed something because the details did not add up in combination: the shoes, the pace, the hat, the way the man looked down that street. No single element was alarming. The pattern was. Awareness of that kind of pattern, someone moving slowly through a residential area at an unusual hour, checking sightlines, not engaging with the environment the way a person exercising or walking casually would, is something investigators consistently say communities underestimate. You do not need certainty to report it. You need observation and a phone number. The third lesson is about timing. Jeff Lamy did not realize the significance of what his dogs did on January 11th until investigators asked him to look back. Meister did not connect what she saw until the same prompt. What this case teaches us about the early stages of a targeted crime is that the evidence often exists in the community before anyone knows to look for it. The window for preserving that evidence, camera footage, memories, notes, timestamps, closes faster than most people expect. Document what you see, date it, keep it. That habit costs nothing. In this case, it may have been the difference between identifying a suspect and being unable to verify a single image. We began this video with a gap between what was released publicly and what the people closest to that house say they witnessed. 53 days in, that gap has not closed. The sheriff confirmed this week that something occurred on January 11th. He also confirmed that no image can be verified as having been taken on that date. Those two statements are both true, and they do not resolve each other. They sit alongside each other in the public record, unreconciled. Nancy Guthrie's family said it plainly in their statement on March 21st. Someone in this community knows something they may not realize is significant. They are not asking for a confession. They are asking for a memory, a timestamp, a camera angle no one has thought to check yet. Unsolved America will cover every development in this case. When the DNA results come back, we will be here. When the FBI makes a move on any of the remaining leads, we will be here. If Nancy is found, whatever that means, in whatever form that takes, we will be here. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss an update. The tip line remains open. 1-800-CALL-FBI. The link is in the description. The reward is $1 million. Use it. One question sits at the center of everything this video has covered. If someone was watching that house 20 days before February 1st, learning the cameras, learning the schedule, learning that an 84-year-old woman lived there alone, then this was not a crime of opportunity. It was a crime of selection. And selection requires a reason. Law enforcement says the home was targeted. They say they believe they know why. They have not said it publicly. Day 53. The cameras are still, the neighborhood is quiet, and somewhere, someone knows exactly what happened.